Hello and welcome back to Twinhammer. Thomas here and super excited to be bringing you our Exodite Dragon Masters full guide, the brand new mounted kill team. We will be covering everything about the team in a very easy to understand way. We are also going to be setting the scene with a bit of lore at the start and then getting into operative selection, faction rules, how the team plays, strengths, and weaknesses. All the sections will be navigable for reference and interest if you want to go back and look at a particular section or if you want to skip ahead to whatever interests you most. All right, getting into the introduction. So, the Dragon Masters are a 5 operative kill team with 3 Raptor riding Eldari and 2 small Dragon Hounds. They are the first mounted operative kill team. They're the first Eldari Exodite models. They have 3 customizable elite operatives, each representing a different archetype. And they have 2 activations each for the mounted operatives, so 8 activations total for the team. Now, introducing the operatives, we have the Sniper Operative, who is the Leystalker. Then we have the Psyker Operative, who is the Stonesinger. And we have the Blade Master Operative, which is the Clanblade, as well as 2 Dragon Hounds called Drakolithes. All right, so the playstyle overall for the team is a hyper elite playstyle. You basically have one of each archetype: the warrior, the mage, and the sniper. And you're going to use each of those 3 elite operatives to really get the most out of their particular role. They are multi-activation, so each of the mounted operatives are going to be activating twice per turn, and you're going to be able to split that up. So using the multi-activation is going to be a really unique part of this team. And they are also a movement ramp team where they have a faction rule which revolves around speed and getting up to certain speeds to unlock the use of certain abilities and ploys. Okay. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of the lore. Who are the Exodites? The Exodites are a kindred of the Eldari species that rejected the main way of life of the Eldari and exiled themselves to remote worlds to start anew. They are a more naturalistic, primitive form of the Eldari that have learned to dwell on paradise-like, lush environments called maiden worlds. Tied to the natural ways of life, their warriors have cultivated deep bonds with the creatures of their worlds, and their psychers have developed command over the very elements themselves. Now, the Exodite maiden worlds. A maiden world, or Lelaythan, in the Eldari lexicon, is one of the lush, verdant homeworlds of the Exodites. The creation of these worlds involves seeding formerly barren planets with life forms using advanced terraforming technologies, gradually leading to their transformation into lush, life-supporting paradise worlds. The rest of the Eldari race mostly live upon craft worlds, vast, planetoid-sized spacecraft crafted from psychoactive wraithbone. The seeding of maiden worlds was part of a program of colonization which was intended to provide a long-term solution to the ancient Eldari Empire's need for more living space, and the result was intended to be only seen by much later generations of Eldari. In fact, many of these worlds ended up being settled by other sentient races such as humans and orcs, much to the surviving Eldari's chagrin and anger. Now, recently on Warhammer Community, they just introduced more lore for one such maiden world, and we have a lore for the maiden world called Sif. Sif is beautiful and dangerous, covered in lush rainforests, deep seas, and wide grasslands, as well as a variety of lethal flora and fauna. It is ruled by nomadic clans of Exodites, each with its own territory. They rarely gather in great numbers, and there are no cities. This lack of visible civilization to draw attention, combined with its remoteness, are 2 of the planet's main defenses. For the most part, Sif has remained undisturbed, but recently a ramshackle fleet has brought a force of beast Snaga orcs to the planet, guided by a Werboy's visions of a world full of hungry, dangerous predators. Dragon Masters. The noble elite of the Exodites, Dragon Knights and Dragon Masters, ride to war atop lizard-like beasts known as Simneth or Drakesteeds, one of several kinds of creatures collectively referred to by Exodites as dragons. Most Dragon Knights are armed with high-tech laser lances and solar carbines, while Dragon Masters include expert duelists, powerful psychers, and deadly snipers. The ceremonial positions at the heart of a Dragon Master kill team are bonded in a harmony of martial through the Clanblade, spiritual through the Stonesinger, and strategic through the Leystalker skills. When bound together, these clan champions form a deadly triad, bolstered by the strength and speed of their ferocious Drakesteeds alongside the keen senses of their Drakolithes. No prey can long evade them. The Clanblades. At one ritual vertex of a Dragon Master triad are the Clanblades, fighting from atop ferocious red maw Drakesteeds. They are close quarters masters who wield powerful swords and axes in a ceremonial pairing known as Moonblades. Clanblades champion the final and most physically dangerous stage of the hunt, when a prey is cornered and its every deadly movement must be anticipated, countered, and exploited. Expert at reading the skills and power of their prey, they direct the rest of the triad in advantageous attack angles before charging in and to personally strike down the deadliest foe. Stonesingers are powerful Exodite psychers who ride venom-spitting Drakesteeds. They are renowned for their ability to contact the souls within a world spirit through the network psychocrystalline menhirs, and possess an eldritch connection with the energy that suffuses their environment. Stonesingers unleash this in elemental manifestations, conjuring howling storms and geomantic fluxes, or rupturing armor, flesh, and bone with thrumming songs of wrath and ruin. They can equally provoke geysers of restorative energy capable of healing fellow Dragon Masters, or call forth thrashing vines and thorny growths of grasping tendrils. Leystalkers are keen-eyed and ever watchful. They divine the complex routes that lead their fellow Dragon Masters to their prey via hidden paths and subtle strategies. Exemplars of their clan's renowned preparedness, Leystalkers direct their intelligent dark-scale Drakesteeds onto new routes to outflank and outwit their foe should they attempt to escape. They are also masterful snipers. Once an unknowing target is in the sights of their expertly crafted long rifle, a Leystalker's kill shot is delivered with unnatural precision. They are also capable of firing with reflective accuracy at speeds which would daunt other marksmen. Drakolithes. These scaled coursing beasts are used by Dragon Masters to help hunt elusive targets. They also protect Exodites from foes attempting to swarm them, intercepting and counteracting with savage ferocity. Drakolithes chase down escaping targets, ambush outflanking enemies, and use exceptional senses of sight, smell, and predatory focus to detect prey attempting to lie low. Now, we'll be getting into identifying the operatives. Of course, we have the Clanblade with his two Moonblades. He's got a sword in his right hand and an axe in his left hand alongside a shield in his left arm as well, and has a solar carbine tucked into a holster. We have the Stonesinger also with a solar carbine tucked into holster and with a distinctive stone stave, which is kind of a magical staff. As well, the Drakesteed of the Stonesinger has a venom crest, which is distinctive because this actually has a spitting ranged attack. So you'll see that the crest has a little bit more pronounced on the Stonesinger's Drakesteed. And then we have the Leystalker Operative with a hunting blade tucked away, as well as a Eldari Ranger long rifle that they use as well. Now, let's get into the operative stats. Firstly, we're going to look at the Dragon Master, otherwise known as mounted profiles. They each have 4 APL, 12-inch move, 3-up save, and 24 wounds. And they are on a unique base size of 75 by 42 millimeters oval. And we're going to see how these operatives later on split that 4 APL up into 2 activations. Getting into the Drakolithe profiles, they have 2 APL, 8-inch move, 5-up save, and 7 wounds. and are on a 32mm base. Okay, getting into operative selection for the Exodite Dragon Masters. The Dragon Masters will always have the Clanblade, the Leystalker, and the Stonesinger, as well as the 2 Drakolithe Operatives. There is no list building in terms of bringing other operatives. It's always the same 5. And they have the archetypes of Recon and Seek and Destroy. They only have the 5 operatives. However, each operative can take up to 2 upgrades, and they each have access to 5 different upgrades. So you could choose 2 out of 5 each to further customize your Clanblade, your Leystalker, and your Stonesinger. So here we could see the names of each of the upgrades, and we're going to be getting into them in detail later on. But for now, you can just know that when picking your operatives, you're going to select 2 upgrades for them to have. And the Clanblade's upgrades deal with either further offensive capability or defensive capability for the Clanblade. The Stonesinger's upgrades revolve around control of the battlefield, manipulating the movement stat of enemy operatives, healing in terms of removing status effects from fellow operatives, or ranged attacks, as well as controlling objectives. The Leystalker's upgrades primarily revolve around shooting, moving, and increased cover. Now, getting into the faction rules, the Dragon Masters have unique rules for activating and moving, and they have some unique mounted interactions explained in their faction rules. Their 3 faction rules are Draconic Cavalry Tactics, Drakesteed Agility, and Mercurial Speed. And because they can be huge walls of text, which is very hard to read all at once, we will be splitting all the rules into easy to understand sections. So they've included an FAQ of frequently asked questions. So we're going to just start off by talking about visibility. You can either draw it from the rider's head or from the mount's head when determining visibility to an enemy operative. Now, activations. Getting into Draconic Cavalry Tactics. Each friendly mounted operative is activated twice per turning point. It's only expended after the 2nd activation. You cannot spend more than 3 AP for it per activation or more than its APL stat per turning point. So they have 2 activations each, 4 APL each. They can only use a max of 3 APL per activation. So let's say shoot, move, and then fight. They can't use all 4 in one go. So you do have to split them. And then you could either do, let's say, a move, fight, or you could do a shoot, move, or a move, shoot. So you could split it up into 2 activations of 2 APL each, or 1 of 3 and 1 of 1. So some very interesting flexibility here, and it's going to be a very unique way of playing a kill team to have these operatives activate twice. Once expended, of course, they can counteract as usual. Now, we're going to get into cover. Mounted operatives cannot be in cover or be obscured by light terrain. Here we can see there's no point in taking barricades because they will not get cover from the barricade. Also, they can't be in cover from terrain less than 2 inches tall. So here we can see a piece of heavy terrain as an example that is not 2 inches tall. It is less than 2 inches. They do not get cover from this piece of terrain. It has to be 2 inches or taller. Here we can see that they also can't be in cover from terrain that's not wholly intervening. So here, let's say that this terrain was, in this case, 2 inches. If you're drawing lines from your base to target that model, this terrain is not wholly intervening over the lines you are drawing in a cone shape, so they cannot get cover. It has to be fully intervening to get cover. All right, can mounted operatives be wholly within areas of smoke? Example, smoke grenades from universal equipment. No, even if there are multiple areas of smoke combined. So even if you threw 2 smoke grenades to try to cover the entire base, you still can't get cover. They're just too big to be covered by smoke. Now, another rule from Draconic Cavalry Tactics is that when they would perform the fight action, the distance requirements of its control range could be changed to 1 inch horizontally and 4 inches vertically until the end of that action. So they could fight up to 4 inches vertically because, as we'll see later, they actually cannot climb. So this rule helps them fight operatives that are on vantages. So now we are going to take a look at the movement of the Dragon Masters, namely revolving around their faction rule called Drakesteed Agility. Exodite Dragon Master mounted operatives cannot perform the charge, dash, fallback, or reposition actions. Instead, they could perform the sprint and turn unique actions. So here we see that they don't have official movement keywords for their movement, but they're going to be moving through an action called sprint. This sprint action is actually 0 AP. Move the active operative to a location it can be placed. This must be directly forwards or backwards in 1 or more straight line increments, and increments are always rounded up to the nearest inch. It cannot move more than 9 inches forwards or 3 inches backwards per activation, and it cannot move more than 12 inches per turning point. And before or after one of the increments, you can pivot the active operative up to 45 degrees. This doesn't use any of its movement allowance and can then continue its movement with any remaining move distance. Sprint is 0 AP. Basically, you can only move 12 inches maximum total per turn over your 2 activations. You can move 9 inches forwards maximum per sprint action, and then maximum 3 inches backwards per activation, and you get 1 free pivot each time you use the sprint action. So here we're going to be getting into how the sprint action works. So included with the Dragon Masters kill team is the sprint template. So in order to make moving oval bases easier to use in your kill team games, they have provided this unique template to help out. So how does moving directly forwards or backwards work during the sprint action? The operative cannot move sideways or diagonally. Its base must remain parallel to the direction of movement. Movement templates are provided as a guide, and some examples are shown. To use the 1 to 3 inch sprint template, place it around the front of the operative's base, as we can see here. Move the operative directly forwards until the front of its base reaches the appropriate distance. To move backwards, use the back of the operative's base. Okay, so you'd use the back of the operative's base and go the opposite way if you wanted to move backwards. To use the 4 to 6 inch sprint template, place it around the front of the operative's base. Move the operative directly forwards until the back of the base reaches the appropriate distance. Okay, so here we're going to see that using that template, you can just move the operative here. It would be on the template. But if you're going to be moving 4 to 6 inches, you're going to be moving that. So any more movement more than 4 and 6, you would move, let's say if you wanted to move 9, you'd use the 6 inch move as we see here. And then you'd use that 3 inch move with the template again to go that full rest. Okay, so we're going to be moving exactly straight forward and straight back. Okay, so here we're going to see how to turn and pivot. Remember, we have 1 free pivot from the sprint action itself, but if you want to do any other turning, we're going to have to spend 1 AP to do the turn action. The turn action is pivot the active operative up to 45 degrees. This doesn't use any of its movement allowance. So in order to keep things simple, the movement of 12 inches is only when you're going forward and backward. The turning and pivoting here does not take any of that movement. An operative cannot perform the turn action while counteracting. For purposes of your opponent's rules, mission rules, and kill zone rules, this action is treated as the dash action or the charge action if the active operative ends the action within control range of the enemy operative. Okay, so here we can see that when we're going to be pivoting, we're going to use 2 templates that they've included, a center pivot template or a front back pivot template. Now we're going to be getting into how we turn and pivot. What is the specific point that I can pivot a mounted operative from? The front, center, or back of its base. Pivot templates are provided as a guide, and some examples are shown below. To use the center pivot template, place one of its back corners at the very front or back of the operative's base so that its straight edge is in line with the center pivot point. Rotate the operative along the inner curve of the template, as we see here. So you get it straight flush with the center of the base. Then you're rotating it until it hits the 45-degree mark. The very front or back of the base cannot rotate past the 45-degree mark. To use the front or back pivot template, place one of its back corners at the very front or back of the operative's base so that the straight edge is in line with the front pivot point. Again, as we see here, rotate the operative along the inner curve of the template from the front or back pivot point. The very front or back of its base cannot rotate past the 45-degree mark. So we can nicely pivot using these templates. You just line it up and then you move it until you get to the 45-degree. What happens if terrain or other operatives prevent my model from pivoting? Most things are ignored, allowing you to freely pivot. An operative's base can pivot through other operatives in hazardous areas. Its base can also pivot through terrain parts no more than 2 inches tall, excluding wall terrain. If parts of the model other than its base would prevent it from pivoting, example, tail weapons, etc., ignore them during the pivot. An operative must still end the action in a location it can be placed, though, so pivoting through areas, objectives, and terrain in this matter just allows it to maneuver, not be placed there as its final location. All right, so can pivot through other operatives and terrain parts less than 2 inches. What happens if parts of my model, like the tail or weapons, prevent my model from moving? As above, just ignore them during the move. An operative must still end the action in a location it can be placed, so moving through areas, operatives, and terrain in this matter just allows it to maneuver, not be placed there as its final location. All right. Back to sprint. An operative cannot perform this action while counteracting. For the purposes of your opponent's rules, mission rules, and kill zone rules, this action is treated as the reposition action or charge action if the active operative ends the action within control range of an enemy operative. So we can see here that if you do use the sprint to kind of move around, if there's any rules that require the reposition or charge action to kind of be declared, it's going to count as that if the requirements are met. There's no stipulation that it can't be used in control range of enemy operatives. So for falling back, I assume that you can fall back using the sprint action. It doesn't specify that it would count as a fallback. So this is one little point of clarity that I would like to see cleared up a bit. I would lean towards they could fall back, and the developers forgot to mention it here. All right, another part of the sprint rule is that they cannot climb and they cannot finish on a vantage higher than 2. So these raptors cannot climb or finish on a vantage terrain. All terrain parts less than 2 inches as accessible terrain. So as we saw earlier, that terrain piece that was less than 2 inches that we couldn't use for cover can just be passed through with a 1-inch movement tax with the accessible keyword. So they can just basically kind of vault over these less than 2-inch pieces of terrain without climbing. They also destroy equipment terrain features when they move through them. So if your opponent has put down a barricade and you move your Dragon Master mounted operative through that terrain piece, counting as accessible, you basically destroy it, which is very cool. Razor wire. If a mounted operative moves through razor wire universal equipment, does it count as crossing over for that equipment? I.e., do you treat the distance as an additional 1? The answer is yes. You pay that additional 1, so you have the accessible plus the additional 1 for moving over the razor wire, but then you destroy it, as we saw just now. Movement. In Killzone Tomb World, can mounted operatives use a teleport pad to teleport? So here we're seeing, how do they interact with teleporting? They cannot teleport. In Killzone Tomb World, if an operative teleports and a mounted operative is on the teleport pad it would teleport to, what happens? So usually, if you have an operative on a teleport pad and your opponent has another operative on another teleport pad, if they teleport, then you would swap positions. Because this model can actually not teleport, you wouldn't swap the positions. What you're going to do is you're going to move the mounted operative the minimum distance possible to allow the other operative to be the only operative on the teleport pad. So you'd basically shift this model off of the teleport pad to get your opponent's operative on it instead. Now, let's talk about Leap, which is a firefight ploy. Use this firefight ploy when a friendly mounted operative performs a sprint action. So when you use a sprint action, that's when you use this Leap. Instead of moving that operative, remove it from the kill zone and set it up in a location it can be placed within 1 inch horizontally of its original location. This distance cannot be measured through terrain features more than 2 inches tall, and that operative cannot be set up on vantage terrain higher than 2 inches from the kill zone floor. That operative is treated as having moved 3 inches for the purposes of its movement allowance and has speed 3. We're going to be seeing speed in a little bit, but basically, if it's awkward to either pivot or move backwards and forwards, you do have an option to spend a CP and just pick up the model and move it 1 inch. So basically the Raptor, the Drakesteed, is doing this little leap, this little hop 1 inch. And this is going to help circumnavigate some tricky situations. If you can't move the way you want to, you do have a way of kind of getting out of that situation with Leap. All right, let's get into deployment using the faction rule Draconic Cavalry Tactics. So when setting up an Exodite Dragon Master kill team before the battle, the first third of your kill team must be friendly Drakolithe operatives set up as normal. So when deploying a kill team, you're always splitting your team into thirds and setting up in thirds. This team has a unique deployment. They are deploying the 2 Drakolithe operatives first. Each friendly mounted operative thereafter must be set up in reserve. Place it to one side instead of in the kill zone. So your 3 mounted operatives are placed to the side. They are not set up in the setup operatives step. In the first firefight phase, each friendly Exodite Dragon Master mounted operative set up in reserve is activated as normal. When it is, set it up in a location it can be placed on the kill zone floor with its base touching your kill zone edge. The operative is treated as performing the turn action, spend the AP accordingly, which is 1 AP as we saw earlier, then continue its activation as normal. So basically, you're going to be bringing them on one at a time, using their first activations, and they're going to be deployed with the back of their base hitting your kill zone edge and then can be moved in from there. You are spending the turn action to move them in, so you can't use the turn as you're first deploying them. You'd have to deploy them and then kind of just move straight forward into cover, and then you'd be able to activate them afterwards and use the turn action again. All right, let's get into the last faction rule, which is Mercurial Speed. Mercurial Speed is basically a keyword to trigger various abilities. Some abilities employees can only be used at certain speed levels, which require the operatives to move certain distances. Each friendly Exodite Dragon Master operative has a speed that has 3 levels, speed 3, speed 4+, and speed 7+. An operative can only have 1 speed level at a time, and it starts with speed 3. Okay, now we're going to see that the 2 different types of operatives mounted in Drakolithe have 2 different ways of getting up to the different levels of speed. So Exodite Dragon Master mounted operative has speed 3 if either of the following are true. It ends a sprint action and either moves forwards or backwards or less than 4 inches forwards. It ends its activation without performing the sprint action. Okay, so an Exodite Dragon Master mounted operative has a speed 4+ if it ends the sprint action and move 4 inches or more during that action, or speed 7+ instead if it moves 7 inches or more during that action. So here we see that speed actually depends on the action itself, and it is going to change each time you do an action. So an operative can only have one speed level at a time. So as you're moving around, your speed level is going to be in constant flux. Now, let's get into the Drakolithe's way of determining speed. Basically, they have speed 3 as a default. They have speed 4 if they've moved more than 2 inches in that action from its previous location, and speed 7 if it moved more than 5 inches from its previous location. Because the Drakolithes don't have the full 12 inches of the mounted, they have 8 inches movement. We're going to have to calculate this a little bit more. So you're looking, instead of speed 4 and 7, you're looking at 2 inches and 5 inches. Okay. So note that it's the distance from the previous location, not the distance moved, that we have to specify. In other words, it cannot just circle back to its previous location and gain high speed. Okay, so here we can see that there's a few different rules that rely on your speed levels. One more point from the actual Mercurial Speed rule is that if a friendly operative has speed 4+, you can retain one of your defense dice as normal success without rolling it. If it has speed 7+, you can retain one as a critical success instead. So basically, if they're moving around quickly, they're going to be harder to shoot and therefore gain a little bit of a higher save. Then we see each of the different mounted operatives has a upgrade that relies on speed levels. And there are going to be 3 strategic ploys that rely on the speed levels as well. So we're just going to continue and we'll see each of these in detail. But here is a location where you can see everything that revolves around the speed keyword. All right, let's get into operative profiles and customization. So each of the upgrades for the mounted operatives. Here we can see that list again, like we saw earlier. So if you wanted a nice clean shot of all of the upgrades, here it is. Now, getting into the Clanblade deep dive. Here we see the full profile of the Clanblade operative. So they have a solar carbine, which is 4 attacks, 3 ups, 3/3, devastating 1. And they have 2 different melee profiles. We have the Drake Steed itself, the Raptors, Fangs and Talons, 6 attacks, 3 ups, 3/5 brutal. So very solid melee profile there. And we have an even more impressive 5 attack, 3 ups, 4/6 lethal 5 Moonblade profile from the Clanblade Rider. Also, he has a scale shield on his left arm. Whenever an operative is shooting this operative and no attack dice are retained as critical successes, worsening the piercing weapon rule by 1. Note that piercing 1 would be therefore ignored. So basically, if your opponent's shooting you with no crits, they're actually going to lose 1 level of piercing if they have any on their weapons. And then it just says here, choose 2 Clanblade upgrades. Now we're going to be getting into the Clanblade upgrades. Here is a nice summary of each of the 5 upgrades. So we're going to be seeing them in detail coming up, but if you wanted a reference page just to scan over the different upgrades that the Clanblade has access to, this is your reference page right here, all in one shot. Okay, so the Moonsung Call. Once during each of this operative's activations, after it's performed the sprint action forwards, so it has to be sprinting forwards, and incapacitated an enemy operative during the fight action, if it's no longer within control range of enemy operatives, you can use this rule. If you do, it can immediately perform a free sprint action forwards using any remaining move distance it had from that first sprint action, but cannot pivot during that free action. An operative can perform 2 sprint actions during its activation to do so, and its speed is measured by the distance moved during both sprint actions combined. The operative cannot have performed any other actions between those actions. Okay, so this allows you to sprint forward, fight an operative, kill it. Then it allows you to do another sprint forwards. So basically, it's like a little speed boost after killing an enemy operative. So you could basically move, fight an enemy operative, kill it, and then sprint to cover. So usually, because you can only do one sprint action at a time, you would have to move to your enemy operative you want to fight in control range, fight them, and then that would be the only other move you could do would be a turn. So you'd kind of be stuck there until you could activate again or counteract. This Moonsong Call allows an extra bit of movement after that. Now, a couple of different scenarios for this is against a horde, for example, you could sprint in, fight, and then you could sprint in to another, let's say, expended model, and then when you activate again, you can fight that next model. So it allows you to kind of go around sprinting and killing more easily with this. Or you can use this as, like I said earlier, a way of just getting extra movement after fighting someone and killing them. You could sprint to someone, fight them, kill them, and then you could sprint to an objective marker if you wanted to get there as well, and then do a mission action. Okay, here is another Clanblade upgrade, the Spectral Nimbus. Once per turning point, when this operative is fighting or retaliating after your opponent rolls their attack dice but before rerolls, you can use this rule. If you do, your opponent cannot retain attack dice results of less than 6 as critical successes during that sequence as a result of lethal 5 or ending or severe. So this is kind of like tilting shields from the Angels of Death. And nice thing about this is whenever you're fighting or retaliating after your opponent rolls, so let's say they do have lethal 5 and they get like 3 5s, you could say, okay, actually, I'm going to use this now. Those can't be retained as crits. You can only use natural 6s. So really nice if you're going into a team with a lot of ways of getting rending, severe, or lethal 5. The Spectral Nimbus is going to be an upgrade you're going to want to look at. All right, our next upgrade is Focused Reflection. This has to do with his shield. Whenever an enemy operative is shooting this operative while within 6 inches of it, so they're shooting you within 6, if you allocate 1 or more critical successes to block your opponent's attack dice, you can use this rule. If you do after that action, but before incapacitated operatives are removed, including this one if relevant, inflict 1 damage on that enemy operative for each critical success allocated this way. Okay, so as we saw earlier, using the speed, you can retain critical successes if you have high speed. And what you can do is you combine that with this Focus Reflection. If you block with that critical success when they shoot you, you can actually reflect 1 damage back on them. So really nice if you think that you're going to be getting shot by like a lot of smaller shots, you could inflict a lot of like free damage back on your opponent if you expect to be shot up close. Definitely would be something to consider against a shooting team, not a melee team, and one where you're probably going to survive the shooting more so, so that you can maximize the damage you're reflecting back. So let's say against like a horde team that's trying to whittle you down, like Kroot or Brood Brothers, you can maybe take this to kind of get some more free damage back on them. All right, Spear Tip of the Clan is our next upgrade, and this has to do with speed. And when this operative is fighting, whenever this operative is fighting, if it has speed 4+, the first time you strike with a normal success, you can inflict 1 additional damage. If you have speed 7+, add 1 to the normal damage stat of melee weapons on its data card. So this is really nice. As we saw earlier, it's add 1 to the normal damage. So the Moonblade has 4/6 damage, so you could get up to 5/6 damage on the Moonblades, which is really, really nice. Also, you could get with your Drake Steed, can go up instead of 3/5, can get up to 4/5. Brutal. All right, let's get into the last upgrade for the Clanblade, the Bladed Stance. This is whenever this operative is fighting or retaliating with its Moonblades, you can resolve one of your successes before the normal order. If you do, that success must be used to block. So if you're going up against a melee team, having this little block that you can do before the fight starts is going to be very helpful for your survivability. So definitely one to consider if going against other melee operatives. So here we see the Dragon Masters Stonesinger. The Stonesinger has a solar carbine, just like the Clanblade. 4 tax 3s, 3/3 devastating 1. It also has a different range profile because this, like I mentioned earlier, the Venom Crest Drakesteed can actually spit. It's got a spit attack 4 tax 3 plus 3/4, range 8 severe, torrent 2. Then we have the normal Drakesteed Fangs and Talons, 6 attacks, 3 ups, 3/5 brutal. And we have the Stone Stave, which is the staff. That is a psychic weapon with 4 attacks, 3 ups, 3/5, lethal 5, shock, and stun. Now, on the back of the Dragon Master card, we also see that it has another basic ability. It has the Song of Renewal. This is a healing ability for 1 AP. It's also psychic. You can either select one friendly Dragon Master operative visible to this operative, so it could be the Drakolithe or mounted. That operative regains up to 2d3 lost wounds. Alternatively, you can do another version of it where you just heal each operative on the entire team up to d3 lost wounds, rolling separately for each, I believe. And we see that it has Psyker in its profile. So the Celestian Insidiants have abilities that revolve around Psykers. Here we see a new Psyker introduced to the game. All right, here is a summary page of all the Stonesinger upgrades, which we're about to see in detail. The first one we're going to look at is Whales of the World, and this is a psychic action. You're going to choose one enemy operative visible to this operative. You're going to subtract 2 inches from that move stat of that operative, and each other enemy operative within 2 inches of it until the end of their next activations, respectively. This isn't cumulative with being injured. Mounted operatives are unaffected if you were to go against enemy mounted operatives. All right, we're going to roll 2d3 separately for each of those operatives. Inflict damage on that operative equal to the difference between the result and their new move stat. So this is a way of basically slowing down a group of enemies. So you're going to want to target, ideally, an enemy that's surrounded by other operatives. And the slower your enemy goes, the more damage you can deal to them. Because if you roll 6, for example, if they move 5 like a dwarf or plague marine, you're going to subtract the result from their new move stat, which would be 3. So you can deal 3 damage there. So nice way of slowing down the enemy and getting chip damage on them. Against faster operatives, this will be less impactful, but it could still be helpful in a lot of scenarios because you could reduce their charge range, make it so that they can't get to objectives. Very nice control ability here from the Stonesinger. All right, now let's get into Cleansing of the Pale Moon, which is another upgrade from the Stonesinger. It's 1 AP psychic action again. Select one friendly Exodite operative visible to this operative. Select one rules effect or stat change your opponent has applied to it. Example, poison token, a -1 APL token, cannot be activated or perform actions, kind of like status effect. This can allow it to regain lost wounds, remove mission pack rules, or ignore the effects of being injured. So, for example, the Exaction Squad have a way of putting an execution order so that a model can't move unless one of their models comes to attack you. This Cleansing of the Pale Moon can actually remove that effect as well. So it can remove poison tokens from Plague Marines. It can remove stun grenade effects. So really, really nice. If you find that you're going up against a debuff team, for example, stealth suits can hand out a lot of -1 APL, or you're going up against teams that like to hand out tokens a lot, then this will be a really good one. Here we have some FAQs to clear this up even more. When using the Cleansing of the Pale Moon action to remove a rules effect when multiple identical tokens can be given to an operative, for example, Grudge, do I remove all of those tokens or one? All of those tokens. So if you're playing against Hearthkin Salvagers and your operative has killed a few and gained 3 Grudge tokens, for example, you can use this to remove all of those Grudge tokens, which is pretty powerful. Now, how does the Cleansing of the Pale Moon action interact with rules that apply an effect to operatives only while they're in a specific area? Example, Death Corpse Gas Bombardment. If you are in a debuff area, Cleansing of the Pale Moon has no effect in that scenario. Just a note that unlike this operative's other unique action upgrades, it can perform this action more than once per turning point, which is really nice. So if you're against Hearthkin again, for example, you can cleanse 2 of your operatives in one turn using this, which is a very cool ability to have and useful. Sow the Seeds. For objective control, this is a very useful ability. Once per turning point during this operative's activation, before or after it performs an action, you can use this rule. If you do, select one objective marker it controls until this operative is incapacitated, until you use this rule again, or until an enemy operative controls that marker, whichever comes first. This operative is treated as contesting that marker with an APL of 1 and controlling it for the purposes of mission actions and victory conditions. Note that this could allow this operative to perform a mission action that would require it to control that marker, which will allow you to control that marker even if you're not on it. And this will be very helpful. You can even do mission actions if you're not on that marker, which is very cool. So it's kind of similar to the Canoptek rule where they could control a marker while not being on it. However, this is even one step further because you can do actions on it and still count as controlling it. However, as soon as your enemy operative controls that marker or your Stonesinger is incapacitated, you can't do this. You would lose control of that marker. All right, Wind's Grace, another Stonesinger upgrade. This is a 1 AP action. It's a psychic action again. You're going to select one of your friendly operatives visible to this operative until the start of this operative's first activation in its next turning point. So you have 2 activations until this one goes again in its very first activation. That selective operative speed is 1 higher. For example, if it had speed 3, it has speed 4+. If it would have speed 4+, it has speed 7+. Okay, it can't perform this more than once per turning point. So if you want an operative to have a higher speed, then this is going to help count as higher. So this can come in handy if you only have, let's say, 4 inches move remaining with your operative, but you want it to count as speed 7. You could use Wind's Grace, and then that operative would count as speed 7, even if it had only moved 4 inches and was currently on speed 4. Okay, and that lasts for kind of like a full turning point until the next turn. Okay, the last one, Earthen Wrath, which is a ranged attack. Strangely, this is not the psychic keyword, even though it feels like a psychic ability. It is basically another ranged weapon profile that the Stonesinger has access to. It's 4 attacks, 3 ups, 4/3, devastating 2, saturate Earthen Wrath. And the Earthen Wrath rule is, if the target is in cover, this weapon has the lethal 5 special rule. So lethal 5+ plus devastating 2 is a very nice combo. And if you anticipate playing against a team that wants to be shooting you from behind cover, this is going to be really good because you have Saturate, which is going to get rid of their cover, and you're going to be able to inflict even more damage on them because they're in cover. So, for example, Spectre Squad want to be behind cover a lot of the time. This would be a great one to take against them because you're going to use their own cover against them. Okay, getting into the Leystalker. So here we see The Leystalker has a long rifle with 2 different profiles, the mobile and stationary. Mobile is 4 attacks, 3 ups, 3/3 devastating 1. Its stationary profile is 4 attacks hitting on 2+, 3/3 devastating 3, and aimed. So the aimed means this operative cannot use this weapon during an activation which it moved more than 3 inches, and cannot move more than 3 inches during an activation which it used this weapon. This weapon rule has no effect on preventing the guard action. So you could still move more than 3 and then guard. You can't use this weapon if you're wanting to move or have moved more than 3 inches. Now, the melee profile, it has the Drakesteed with the normal Drakesteed attacks, and the Hunting Blade, which is 3 attacks, 3 ups, 3/5, lethal 5. So you're probably going to be using the Drakesteed's profile in combat here, especially because its Drakesteed, the Leystalker, has a special rule for its Raptor. It's called Implacable Dark Scale. You can ignore any changes to this operative's Drakesteed, Fangs, and Talons weapons hit stat from being injured. So even if you're injured, you can attack with the same hit stat from your Drakesteed, Fangs, and Talons. All right, getting into the Leystalker upgrades. Here is the summary page for all of the Leystalker's 5 upgrades you can choose. And we're going to get into detail now. Starting with Nomad Executioner. Whenever this operative is performing the sprint action, it can perform the shoot action during that action. It must do so in a location it can be placed, and any remaining move distance from that sprint action can be used after it does so. Note that as the shoot action occurs before the sprint action ends, for that shoot action, this operative speed is whatever it had before beginning the sprint action. So basically, you can shoot in between a sprint action. So you can move a little bit, shoot, and then move more afterwards. And this is going to allow you to you could pop out from behind cover, shoot, and then go back into behind cover. Because remember, we can only usually do 1 sprint action per activation. This is going to allow you to kind of split that sprint action up into 2 different segments and shoot in the middle of that, which is very handy. I think this is an excellent upgrade. We have a similar rule in Blades of Cain Dire Avengers. This is going to come in handy a lot with the Leystalker. Elusive Phantasm is our next upgrade for Leystalker. At the end of each firefight phase, if this operative isn't within control range of enemy operatives, it can perform a free sprint or turn action, but cannot move more than 3 inches during that action, and its speed remains the same. Note that it must still have the necessary amount of movement allowance during this turning point. So if you have a little bit of move left over, if you have 3 inches left over at the end of the turn, you can move the Leystalker using this upgrade, which is going to be quite handy. If you pair this with the previous upgrade, your Leystalker is going to be able to have really flexible movement and get in and out of cover nicely during the turning point. So we've seen 2 upgrades revolving around some bonus flexibility and movement for the Leystalker. Getting into a shooting upgrade for the Leystalker called the Fated Shot. Once per turning point, when this operative performs the shoot action and you select the profile of its long rifle, you can use this rule. If you do, select one of the following rules for it to have until the end of that sequence. You can either choose the enemy operatives cannot be obscured, or having other friendly operatives within an enemy operative's control range doesn't prevent that enemy operative from being selected as a valid target. So you could shoot into combat, or you could get anti-obscuring once per turn with the Leystalker. So this is really nice because let's say your Clanblade has killed a model and then sprinted using their upgrade to another model to fight them again. You can shoot into that combat with the Fated Shot first per turn, which is a cool scenario. having anti-obscuring once per turn, if you're going to be shooting from the back of the board, a lot of heavy terrain can give obscuring in this edition. So the anti-obscuring is a very nice one to have as well. This I could see being used in a lot of scenarios and a nice one to have at your disposal pretty often. Let's get into another one, the Nexus Sentinel. So once per turning point, this operative can perform the guard action during its activation regardless of the kill zone if it has speed 3. Whenever this operative performs a point-blank shot as a result of the guard action, don't worsen the hit stat of its weapons as a result of performing a point-blank shot. So this will give you the ability to guard on even Vulcus and other open kill zones, not just in close quarters, which is going to be very nice. And paired with the faded shot, you could get anti-obscuring on that shot or shoot into combat. Also, if they charge you when you go on guard, the point blank is not worsened. So you could shoot them from a stationary profile, point blank, full profile, which is really nice. I do see this being quite useful for area denial and control. And so we have a lot of nice upgrades. You're going to have to, depending on which game, depending on your play style, you might want to go more shooting or more movement for the Leystalker. Now, getting into the Gloaming Mantle upgrade. Whenever an operative is shooting this operative from more than 8 inches away, if you cannot retain any cover saves, you can retain one of your defense dice as normal without rolling it. If you can retain any cover saves, you retain one cover save as a critical success instead. If you're going into a shooting matchup against an enemy team that likes to shoot you from afar, for example, the stealth suits can retain a cover save if they're shooting you from more than 8 inches away. Or Spectre Squad might be another one that's trying to shoot you from far. Any team that wants a long-range shootout, Gloaming Mantle would be a really nice way of getting some better cover saves here. All right, getting into the Drakolithes, and they have some interesting synergy with the Leystalker as well. So we saw earlier their preternatural evasion rule. So they have a different way of calculating speed. They have the Fangs and Talons, which is 4 attacks, 3 ups, 3/4 rending. They've got that profile of the 2 APL, 8-inch move, 5 up save, and 7 wounds like we saw earlier. And they have Beast Rule is, this operative cannot perform any actions other than charge, dash, fallback, fight, guard, pick up marker, place marker, reposition, and mission actions. Okay, so notably no shoot action. Any other one is pretty universal. So they could have just said can't perform the shoot action. This operative cannot perform pickup marker, place marker, or mission actions unless there's a friendly Leystalker operative that isn't incapacitated. And it can't use any weapons that aren't on its data card. Okay, so really interestingly, the Leystalker kind of, I guess, is the handler for these. So he allows them to do mission actions or pick up marker, place marker. If he gets incapacitated, the Drakolithes basically don't have their direction and they can't do those actions. Another interesting point is they are not expendable. We've seen the drones from the stealth suits, for example, are expendable. They don't count towards kill op. These Drakolithes do. So you have a 5 operative kill team. You're going to be on the 5 operative kill op chart. And so the 7 wound, 5 up save Drakolithes are going to be easy pickings for your opponent if you don't play them well. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. They do have 8-inch moves, so they can kind of explode from behind cover pretty well. So using these in a way to not get them killed will be very essential for this team. All right, now we're going to get into the shooting profiles of the team. So we've already seen the Solar Carbine, the Long Rifle, the Venom Crest Spit. One thing to keep in mind is that you do actually have Severe and Torn 2 on that Spit, which is really nice. And we've seen the Earth and Wrath before. This is just all of the range profiles on the team in one nice place because we're about to see all of the rules that help with the shooting on this team. So we're going to look at a strategy ploy called Wind Swift Precision. And this is one of the ploys that deals with speed. Whenever a friendly Exodite Dragon Master operative is shooting, if it has speed 4+, the ranged weapons have the balance weapon rule. So basically, they get better at shooting if they're at higher speeds. So as long as you've moved more than 4 during that action, it has speed 4, you can actually get balanced on your ranged weapons. And it says ranged weapons in general, so it could even be on like crack grenades. Doesn't have to be ones on the profile. Now, let's take a look at a faction equipment, the first faction equipment we're looking at, and it is Leystalker Crystal Matrices. Once per turning point, when a friendly Exodite Dragon Master operative is shooting using the shoot action and you select a solar carbine or a profile of its long rifle, you can use this rule until the end of that activation. That weapon has the piercing 1. So you could get piercing 1 once per turn on a carbine or long rifle profile. Then we have Clan Talismans, which is another faction equipment. Once per turning point, when a friendly Exodite Dragon Master mounted operative is shooting, fighting, or retaliating, so not the Drakolithes, if you roll 2 or more fails, you could discard one of them to retain another as a normal success instead. So your classic Purity Seals type rule, if you have 2 or more fails, you're just going to trade it in for 1 hit instead, which is nice to get your reliability up. Then we have a firefight ploy called Survival Spirit. Use this firefight ploy during a mounted operative's activation or counteraction before or after it performs an action. To the start of its next activation, you can ignore any changes to that operative's weapons from being injured. All right, let's get into the melee of the team. Here we can see the profiles that we've seen already, just all in one place for your reference. And now here are all the rules that are going to help those melee profiles hit harder and more reliably. We have 2 strategic ploys. The first one is Draconic Fury. Whenever a friendly Dragon Master operative is fighting, if it has speed 4, its melee weapons have the balance weapon rule. If it has speed 7+, its melee weapons have the ceaseless weapon rule. So again, seeing a boost from speed, the faster they're going, the better they are. So if you've moved more than 7, get up to speed 7, you're going to get ceaseless weapon rule. And this could be on the Drakesteed's attacks, or it could be on the other melee profiles that they have. We saw the Implacable Darksteel from the Leystalker's Drakesteed, which is just down here. And then we have another strategy ploy called Ride Them Down. Once during each friendly mounted operative's activation, whenever it ends its move during the sprint action, if it moved 4 or more inches during that action, you can inflict 1 damage on the enemy operative within its control range. Move 7 inches or more during that action, or if it's a Clanblade operative, you can inflict D3 damage on 1 enemy operative within its control range instead. Okay, so the Clanblade can do D3 regardless of how much it moved, but the other 2 will have to have moved more than 7 to get D3 damage. So really nice way of getting some damage in before you even get to fighting. Now we have a firefight ploy called Feral Hunger. Use this firefight ploy after rolling attack dice for a friendly operative. If it's fighting against a wounded enemy operative with its Drakesteed Fangs and Talons or Fangs and Talons, you can reroll any of your attack dice. So the Drakesteed's attacks or the Drakolith's attacks can get basically all rerolls of their attack dice after, let's say you go in with a Drakesteed or Drakolith, you've whiffed your roll, you can use Feral Hunger to get full Relentless on those rolls and reroll all of them, which is really nice. And then we saw the Clan Talismans in the shooting. We can also use that for fighting and retaliating. So the Purity Seals discard 2 fails to retain a normal. And then we saw the Clanblade upgrade Spear Tip of the Clan from the Clan Master, and that's another way of him getting more damage. We've already seen that. Now let's get into the defense and survivability stack. So they have a 3-up save, as we've seen. In addition, we saw that they can retain from their Mercurial Speed rule. They can retain success If they're going at higher speeds, they can retain defense dice. And here we see a faction equipment called Dragon Scale Mesh. Once per turning point, when an operative is shooting an mounted operative, in the roll defense dice, you can retain one of your normal successes as a critical success instead. This is going to pair nicely with that Clanblade shield upgrade, which can reflect critical successes back. If you take Dragon Scale Mesh with that, you have more critical successes to reflect back. So really nice there. And we have a strategic ploy called Sinuous Flux. Whenever an enemy operative is shooting a friendly operative more than 6 inches from it, if that friendly operative has speed 4 or speed 7, your opponent cannot re-roll their attack dice. So if you have moved and got up to those higher speeds, your opponent can't even re-roll. Let's say they have Relentless. For example, Khazra can have access to Relentless after they shoot you. They're shooting you from more than 6, so they're shooting you with their plasma gun. If you've got to speed 4 or 7, the Relentless rule cannot be used here. Cleansing of the Pale Moon, which can remove status effects, damage effects like poison. So that's one way of surviving more. And then we saw Song of Renewal on the Stonesinger's profile, which can hand out those nice healing to the team. All right, let's get into scoring and mission actions. So here we see a number of rules that revolve around scoring and mission actions. The Stonesinger Upgrades, sow the seeds, we saw that before, a way of controlling an objective without actually being on it. Really nice, we talked about that. Riding Mastery is a firefight ploy that we haven't discussed yet. Firefight ploy, when a friendly mounted operative performs a sprint action during that activation. During that action, that operative can perform the pickup marker, place marker, or mission action. You can determine control during that action to do so. And any remaining move distance it had from that sprint action can be used after it does so. So this is a really nice way of kind of doing a flyby mission action. You can sprint onto an objective marker, do a mission action, let's say loot, and then use the rest of your sprint to then maybe go into control range, charge an enemy operative, or move a little bit further, get visibility on an operative, shoot them. So really nice way of doing kind of a flyby pickup marker or mission action. And here we see a little bit ease of getting more access to CP. If you take the Spirit Stones faction equipment, whenever one of your mounted operatives goes down, gets incapacitated, you gain 1 CP. So if you anticipate one of your operatives going down, you can get 1 CP. Could be nice to gain a little bit more CP efficiency. And here we see just a reminder, the Drakolithe, they can only do the mission actions and the pickup marker, place marker if the Leystalker is alive. All right, let's get into some scoring. Let's get into some Tac Ops. Now, they have access to 2 archetypes, Recon and Seek and Destroy. And the 3 that really stand out to me at this point in time are Retrieval, Route, and Dominate. We just saw that Retrieval, they can do pickup markers and mission actions on the fly. So you could sprint to an objective marker, let's say the middle, sprint there, and then allow yourself to continue your sprint and get into a place of safety, or turn and sprint after that. So really, the Drakolithes can also do mission actions and Retrieval, which give you flexibility for that as well. And Retrieval, because you have such high wounds on your operatives, they can pick up that and survive. So I do think Retrieval is a very strong ploy for this team. Route, because you have up to 12-inch movement and the ability to in some cases, for example, the Clanblade, kill multiple operatives per turn, Route would be a good option, I think, for this team as well. You have the speed and the damage output to basically get into your opponent's half and be killing. Dominate is in a really strong spot because it got buffed in the most recent data slate. And if you kill an enemy elite, you're going to get 2 Dominate tokens, you have healing and survivability on a lot of your operatives. So to survive and keep those dominate tokens will be a very good plan. And so I think Dominate's also an extremely strong Tac Op for this team. Flank, scout enemy movement, and sweep and clear, I would say you could do with this team, but they are an obviously lesser choice, I think, compared to these three with the way that these teams' rules work. All right. So we're going to be heading now into the strengths and weaknesses, a little bit of a conclusion. But before we do, I want to just remind everyone we have a 10% discount codes for Crossfire Games. They have amazing dice, tokens, movement trays, card sorters, and so many different things. I can really predict them also doing some custom tokens and measuring tools for this team with those templates, which you're going to need if you don't have the official team. And let's say you wanted to do some converting, getting those templates from Crossfire Games is going to be amazing. You can pick up so many cool tokens as well at the same time and everything. It's an organizer's dream. We have a 10% discount code in the description below. I highly recommend you check out these amazing products. And I just want to give a shout out to Top Shelf and Chimera Gaming. These are two incredible stores in the Greater Toronto area that are going to be incredible resources for getting the Exodite Kill Team box, the Spectre Squad, which just got released on their own, and even the data cards and whatever hobby needs you need to get. Highly recommend these two amazing pillars of the Kill Team community in Canada. All right, let's get now into the strengths and weaknesses. So after going through all those rules, we can see here that their strengths are they're reliable. We saw a lot of ways of getting rerolls, a lot of ways of kind of mitigating any hits. They have a lot of ways of getting better cover saves, so getting more reliable defense. And they are generally strong in that regard. It's going to be hard to whiff if you do have the ploys and equipment up at the right time. They are balanced. So we've seen that they have a mix of shooting, control, and damage. So they have a nice balance in their team. They're fast. We saw 8-inch profiles and 12-inch movement. They're going to be able to get around the kill zone quite quickly if you're not expecting it. And if you like a nice fast team that can close the distance quickly, this is a team for you. They're durable. We saw they have healing. They have ways of getting cover, and they have 24 wounds with a 3-up save. That is going to be incredible. You can almost think of it as 16 wounds for the Drakesteed and 8 wounds for the Rider. And then we have flexibility. So we saw each of the 3 mounted operatives can have 5 different upgrades. So depending on the matchup, you can really tech into what you need when you need it. Now, the weaknesses, I would say because they do have those very clear specializations between the 3 different mounted operatives, if you lose one and you needed that healing, let's say, for example, or you needed the Drakolithes to do their mission actions and you lose the Leystalker, it can really affect the team's balance. So using their 3 roles in harmony is going to be a skill set that you're going to need to develop. And so I'd say a weakness because it's not going to be the easiest thing to manage right off the bat. They're difficult to maneuver. We saw that they're kind of moving back and forward in a very linear manner, and the pivoting is going to be very precise. So they're not going to be the easiest to maneuver around, even though they can burst quite quickly in these large distances. They are going to be a little bit harder to turn and to get used to moving them. So that's a little bit of a weakness. Low model count. They only have 5 on the kill op. We saw that the Drakoliths, if they go down, that's easy pickings for 2 on the kill op out of 5. We also saw that they do have 2 activations, but they can only get up to 8 activations. So you can get out activated by your opponent if they want to weigh you out. And Finally, they have that unique rule set. So as we saw, there's a lot to unpack and get used to. They're not a team that you can pick up with a lot of experience coming from other teams because they're so unique. So that's going to take a little bit of time to get used to, and it might be hard to get them up to a good, comfortable level. We'll have to see, but that's a potential weakness as well. All right, that is our conclusion. We hoped you really liked this guide. We try to make things clear and concise as possible. There's so many things that are really wordy, and we hope that this gave you a very clear and concise overview of the team. If you like this style, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We will be aiming to follow up with a masterclass on this team with more experience on the team. They're just about to get released. And so there's going to be a lot to unpack with this unique playstyle. We're hoping to do a battle report and a masterclass to really go in depth on how they feel. All right. If you did like this guide, we have a lot of other guides. We most recently did a Vespid guide. We have Spectre Squad guide. So please do check those out if you are interested in any of those other teams as well. And thank you so much for watching, and hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.